of racial injustice, or equality and injustice. I'd like to share with you a draft document regarding the support of a racial equity justice for consideration. The recent killing of George Floyd is a continuous reminder to all of us that we have a long way to go as a society as it relates to racism. As a school board, we are charged with ensuring the safety and security of our students, as well as an equitable and quality education. The draft document reads as Farmington Public Schools Board of Education Resolution. Whereas a public school district is tasked with providing for the safety and welfare of its students and to educate students in a safe and nurturing environment. Whereas we are committed to eradicating racism, bigotry, discrimination, hate, and violence in any form. Whereas we believe the children begin their lives without hatred and bigotry, and we must, as a school system, uphold the public's trust by fostering understanding, acceptance, respectful civic discourse, and inclusion among our students when they enter our doors. Whereas we believe we must work with our community partners to create the desired community free of racism. Whereas we believe we have the ability to uplift a community of diverse ideas that recognize and celebrate all the attributes that form children and hold true to the ideal that we are all created equal. Whereas we believe that educators should be lifelong learners about race and racism, and as a district, we should provide the necessary resources to facilitate discussion of race and racism. Whereas, as we grow in our learning of racism, we must continue to reflect on and amend curricula, training, policies, and systemic practices used in the schools to help end racism. And now therefore it be resolved that Farmington Public Schools hereby commits to stand against any acts of racism, disrespect, violence, and inequitable treatment of any person. Mrs. Weems.
Thank you for reading that resolution. I recognize that this is a draft, and I assume that the thought process was that we would read, review, and then potentially consider this for some sort of action at a future meeting. Given that we don't have a future meeting scheduled until August, I'd like to move that we go ahead and consider adopting this or move to adopt this resolution now. Although we all didn't have a whole lot of time to review, and if I had more time, I probably would have made some adjustments, including addressing a commitment towards identifying and adjusting discriminatory practices and policies and addressing implicit bias. I think that this is a really good start, and so I would move that the board adopt this resolution.
I have a comment, Ms. Green.
Yes, Mrs. Smith.
I think this is very disappointing that we are going along with this tonight. It's very disturbing to me that we decide to do this 3 weeks after Mr. Floyd was brutally murdered, and the country saw this. It's disturbing that our board president reached out to us the eve of the meeting, which was last night, to ask us to take a vote on what to write this up and to turn this in ASAP. There are 3 board members on here of color, one which is a male that, regardless of what his profession is, he could be stopped and pulled over at any time. I think that this was taken lightly. Other districts that I have worked with and out throughout this whole ordeal have shown that even though they didn't have the diversity that we have in this community, they moved on this immediately. I take offense to it being rushed and given it to us at the last minute. I have worked with the mayor of Farmington and Farmington Hills on that resolution for them to do. And it's also disturbing that we decide to do something after the removal of a teacher in this district. I understand that this is a start, but we've got to start with the systemic racism in our own community. We have teachers that are allowed to put their hands or do things to African-American students. And then when African-American teacher does something, it goes undetected. We had an incident at East Middle School where
Point of order.
just a second, Mr. Johnson. We had
It's point of order.
we had a teacher over at East Middle School.
Mrs. Smith,
called
we have a point
teacher-
of order.
Excuse
Mrs.
me.
Smith?
We had,
I'm
so
sorry,
now
we have
I'm
a
going
point
to
of
be
order. I have to
silenced.
recognize
I'm
that.
going to be silenced about this.
No,
You gotta start at
you
home.
hear what the
You
point of
gotta
order
start
is.
at home. No, I'm being silenced. But it's a shame that we have two board members that said that they couldn't come to the march because of the coronavirus, but went to 3 parades and no social distancing at all. So I'm not going to be silenced on this. You are talking to a woman of color.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. To Ms. Weems' motion, which was on the table, so that we can discuss this, I would support Ms. Weems' motion.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I know you called point of order. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, that was it. It was that we should have the discussion after Ms. Weems' motion was approved or seconded. And I wanted to second her motion so that we are following proper procedure. It was not an attempt to silence anyone. It was just proper protocol that we're supposed to follow.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Weems to adopt the resolution in support of racial equality and justice as presented, supported by Mr. Johnson. Is there further discussion? Mrs. Cummings.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Johnson and Ms. Bowman for working to